This is the main news of Korea today. President Yoon Suk-yeol held telephone talks with U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who is visiting South Korea, and announced that he would closely cooperate with the U.S. Congress to develop a global strategic alliance between the two countries. On Pelosi's visit to the JSA in the Joint Security Zone, he also said, it will be a sign of strong deterrence between South Korea and the U.S. President Yoon had a 1+6 telephone conversation with House Speaker Pelosi, 5 congressmen present, and U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Philip Goldberg, for 40 minutes from 2:30 p.m., Kim Tae-ho, the first deputy director of the National Security Office, told reporters at the briefing room in the afternoon. The 5 U.S. House officials present are Gregory Meeks, Veterans Affairs Chairman Mark Takano, Susan Delveny, Raja Krishnamurti, and Andy Kim. During the telephone talks, discussions were held on issues such as diplomacy, defense, technology cooperation, youth, women, and climate change. President Yoon had a one-on-one call with all the attendees, including Speaker Pelosi, on related issues, which took longer than expected. Yoon promised to work closely with the U.S. Congress on developing a global strategic alliance promised by President Joe Biden at the May 21 summit, Kim said. The visit will be a sign of strong deterrence between the U.S. and South Korea as Pelosi is scheduled. In the meantime, he added, President Yoon wished Pelosi and her party's Asian tour successfully to the end, and asked the members of the House of Representatives who attended to pay special attention to our Koreans in the region. Pelosi thanked President Yoon for taking time out of his first summer vacation with his family, Kim said. Pelosi noted that the Korea-U.S. alliance is important from many points of view, but it must be observed, especially morally. Like the unveiling ceremony of the wall of the Korea-U.S. Memorial in Washington, the two countries have an obligation to protect and foster peace and prosperity that have been protected at the expense of many people for decades, he said. We propose to continue to foster a free and open Indo-Pacific order between Korea and the U.S. A key official at the National Security Office said in a further explanation that President Yoon and Pelosi also discussed South Korea's cooperation in the Ukraine crisis and how the U.S. will support the supply chain issue with legislation. According to the official, Rep. Susan Delveny, who is also chairman of the House Revenue and Expenditure Committee, conveyed her thoughts on high-tech, semiconductor, technology cooperation, and global trade supply chain issues to President Yoon. He also discussed cooperation measures, saying he hopes the two countries will benefit from the Semiconductor Science and Technology Bill that recently passed the U.S. Congress. In a phone call with Andy Kim, he said he wanted to meet President Yoon when he visited the U.S. The official said, President Yoon said he was impressed by Andy Kim picking up trash alone during the January 6 U.S. congressional intrusion incident last year, and said he wanted to see his face and say hello and talk to him when he visited the U.S. The Taiwan issue was not mentioned in the call. The official said, we didn't take out the other person or us. Pelosi visited Taiwan before visiting Korea, which China strongly protested. Foreign media reported that the U.S.-China conflict reached its peak. Regarding the criticism that President Yoon and Speaker Pelosi did not meet, the official said, we said we would not meet 2 weeks ago due to President Yoon's vacation schedule, and Pelosi's visit to Taiwan was decided a week ago. As for the call, he said, I knew there would be no talks, but it was a little disappointing, but asking to meet again is protocol disrespectful and the president's vacation is broken, adding, I called to say hello because I thought of various options, but I felt good because I was paying close attention to the call while observing the other person's preparation. Regarding the joining of the U.S.-led Chip 4 alliance with the aim of forming a stable semiconductor production and supply chain between Korea, Japan, and Taiwan, the official said, we have not talked about it on the phone, but we will talk about it as a semiconductor consultation. We need to compete in good faith with the world's most competent countries, not only the United States but also the Netherlands, he said. Rather than turning around alone and planning separately, it is helpful for our semiconductor future to know where this country invests, exchange and compete in good faith. We will continue to discuss customized supply chains suitable for China, he said. We can say that it is not a semiconductor alliance that excludes anyone. On the 4th, the President's office expressed its position to the effect that the Korea-U.S. alliance is the top priority on the situation where there is no face-to-face meeting between U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and President Yoon Suk-yeol. Choi Young-byum, Senior Secretary for Public Relations, met with reporters at the presidential office in Yongsan, Seoul later in the day and explained to the U.S. that it was difficult to schedule a presidential visit due to the overlapping schedule of House Speaker Pelosi's visit to Korea and President Yoon's vacation. However, as the head of the Parliament of major allies visited Korea, there was an exchange of opinions between the two countries about exchanging messages with each other even if it was difficult to have a face-to-face meeting with President Yoon, he explained. It is known that the call will be made after 3 p.m. Regarding the monetary agenda, Choi explained, we welcome Chairman Pelosi's visit to Asia and visit Korea and expect to share these words to strengthen and develop the alliance between the two countries more closely in the future. Earlier, an official at the presidential office said in a briefing the previous day that there was no meeting with President Yoon when House Speaker Pelosi visited Korea. He explained that he did not set a separate schedule because it overlapped with President Yoon's summer vacation. Asked whether the call between President Yoon and House Speaker Pelosi was coordinated after visiting Korea, Choi said, I understand that it was intentional with such a call intention, stressing, it is not a schedule that was suddenly made. Even if President Yoon is on vacation, some people have virtually denied the interpretation that he may have hurriedly scheduled the call as the conservative camp has also raised calls to meet Pelosi, the number one person in the U.S. Congress. Senior Secretary Choi said, even if we coordinated in advance, it is pointed out that it is slight of the U.S. Congress not to meet the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Moreover, when asked if it was right for the President to watch the play in this situation, he dismissed it as not true at all. There is no reason for us to belittle the U.S. Congress, and there is no reason for us to neglect or belittle the most important congressional factor, he said. The play was what Pelosi saw before she arrived in Korea yesterday evening. Regarding the failure of the face-to-face meeting between President Yoon and Speaker Pelosi, he said, everything was decided in consideration of the national interest as a decision was made in consideration of the national interest as a whole. Regarding the specific meaning of the decision that considers the overall national interest, he replied, I said it compressedly, and the answer is the area of the media. Pelosi held talks with National Assembly Speaker Kim Jin-pyo earlier in the day, made a joint press announcement, followed by a luncheon. After that, he will visit the JSA in the Panmunjom Joint Security Area to encourage soldiers. Yoon Hee-jaun, a candidate for the National Police Agency, said it is possible to put police commandos at strike sites such as Daewoo Shipbuilding and marine engineering subcontractors. According to the National Assembly and others on the 4th, candidate Yoon submitted a written answer to a confirmation hearing by many members of the National Assembly's Public Administration and Security Committee, saying, according to Article 6, illegal occupation of facilities, which is remarkably difficult to respond with general police force, it can be deployed in consideration of the safety of the target. He also said, in this case, the head of the National Police Agency or the head of the Metropolitan and Provincial Police Departments are deciding whether to deploy commandos. Regarding the Yongsan demolition incident, which occurred in 2009 when the police commando was deployed, he said, I understand that the Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency was reported and approved the dispatch of commandos at the time, adding, we plan to make a more careful judgment by comprehensively reviewing the field situation. Candidate Yoon, along with Minister of Public Administration and Security Lee Sang-min, inspected the strike site of Daewoo Shipbuilding in South Gyeongsang Province by helicopter. At the time, it was shortly after President Yoon Suk-yeol's remarks, didn't we wait long enough? And some interpreted that the input of public power has entered the countdown. Since then, negotiations between labor and management have been concluded and the strike has ended, but suspicions have been raised through media reports that the police commando was ordered to be considered at a meeting presided over by Minister Lee. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen urged China to refrain from threatening security, stressing its willingness to defend its sovereignty over China's military drills in protest of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit. China has begun military exercises in areas around Taiwan, Tsai said in a video statement on the 4th. It is irresponsible for both Taiwan and the international community to fire missiles at these continuous and deliberate military threats, especially on the world's busiest routes, he said. Military training not only exacerbates the situation in the Taiwan Strait, but also violates our sovereignty, Tsai said. It creates high tensions in the Indo-Pacific region, which is under unprecedented threat not only for air and sea transport safety, but also for the normal function of international trade. I sincerely urge China to act rationally and refrain from doing so, he said. Taiwan will not amplify conflict or incite conflict, he said. Taiwan will firmly defend sovereignty and security as a bastion of democracy and freedom. Tsai said, I would like to ask the international community to join forces to support democratic Taiwan and to stop unilateral and irrational military action, adding, I would like to reiterate that peace in the Taiwan Strait is a common responsibility for everyone in the region. We are committed to maintaining the status quo on both sides of the Taiwan Strait and are open to constructive dialogue, Tsai said. Taiwan will never give in to threats. Earlier, Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense said on its website, the Chinese Communist Party fired 11 Dongfeng-affiliated ballistic missiles into the waters surrounding northern, southern, and eastern Taiwan until 4 p.m. at 1:56 p.m. The Korean military immediately identified the launch movement using various early warning and surveillance reconnaissance devices and strengthened its combat readiness by activating related defense systems, he said. We condemn unreasonable actions that undermine regional peace. It threatens Taiwan's national security, heightens regional tensions, and affects regular international operations and trade, Foreign Ministry man said in a Chinese military exercise. I strongly condemn the Chinese government. It is observed that China's anger will be directed to Taiwan due to U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. In reality, China cannot punish the U.S. CNN said in an analysis of Chinese expert Yoon Sun at the Stimson Center in Washington on the 3rd, China's military training means that it will squeeze Taiwan, adding, the pressure of the Chinese military targeting Taiwan will rise anew in a predictable time. Zhao Chunshan, an honorary professor at the Continental Research Institute of Taiwan's Tamkang University, said in a Hong Kong magazine on the 4th, China will make Taiwan very painful, adding, the biggest winner of this visit to Taiwan is Speaker Pelosi. He left a lot of problems when he left. It seems that Taiwan will also have to pay the economic price. On the previous day, China's Korea Customs Service temporarily suspended imports of Taiwanese fruits and fish. China's Ministry of Commerce also announced that it would cut off the supply of natural sand to Taiwan. Sand is a material for silicon, a key component of semiconductors. They are trying to hurt the semiconductor industry, which feeds Taiwan, even symbolically. There was a heated debate in Taipei. Pelosi left the world with her presence, the conservative Yonhap news agency said. However, the 23 million Taiwanese have taken on the fourth Taiwan Strait crisis. TVBS also said, Taiwan is in a stress test situation due to China's military training and trade retaliation. The basic economic cooperation agreement signed by China and Taiwan will also be affected. On the other hand, the Liberty Times, which supports Taiwan's independence, said, we should work with the US, Japan, and the European Union to prevent China's bullying, and the official Central News Agency also added meaning, the visit to Pelosi has led the international community to watch China's threats and fears more closely. There were also criticisms that his visit was inappropriate. According to a poll of 18,300 residents conducted by the Yonhap news agency on the 2nd, 64% of the respondents said they opposed Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. This is why cross-strait relations will get worse. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen's diplomacy and crisis management skills have also been put to the test. Although he received a promise to protect democracy from Pelosi, who will retire a few months later, he has to face the harsh reality of enduring China's military and economic pressure, which is unknown. Some analysts say that President Tsai threw a winner of Pelosi's visit to Taiwan to win the local elections to be held in November this year. Recently, President Tsai's approval rating has fallen to the 30% range due to his inexperience in responding to COVID-19. He explained that he took out a Pelosi card to shake the political situation and rally supporters before the local elections. The Korean Air Force's Special Flight Team Black Eagles caught the attention of locals by drawing a Tajik pattern over the Egyptian pyramid on the 3rd. Black Eagles is the first time that Egypt, the largest military power in Africa and the Middle East, has allowed a foreign Air Force Special Flight Team to fly above the National Treasure Pyramid. Black Eagles participated in the Pyramid Air Show 2022 held near Cairo's Garrison Ramad and presented a joint flight with the Egyptian Air Force's Special Flight Team Silverstas. The flight was jointly organized by the Air Force, the Korea Aerospace Industries, and the Egyptian Air Force to support exports of domestic aircraft such as Fa-50, which added combat missions to the T-50 operated by Black Eagles. Black Eagles successfully finished its performance in Egypt following Britain and Poland, playing a role as a pioneer in K-bang exports. Egypt's selection of Black Eagles as a partner by holding an air show over its symbol, the pyramid, is a result of recognizing the pilot's skills and the excellence of Korean aircraft. It is also interpreted as a decision that reflects the hope of defense cooperation with South Korea. South Korea and Egypt are reportedly discussing ways to export Fa-50 and jointly produce the Fa-50 through behind-the-scenes negotiations after the K-9 self-propelled artillery export negotiations that took place earlier this year. Egypt is in the process of introducing high-level training aircraft with the aim of selecting a model in 2023, and plans to replace old aircraft sequentially. The Egyptian Air Force is actively considering introducing the Fa-50, which boasts excellent performance and cost-effectiveness. In particular, Egypt is also interested in securing the next core power, so it is considered a potential export destination for the Korean fighter KF-21, which succeeded in flying early last month. The Air Force and the defense industry plan to meet Egyptian military demand and promote exports to third countries through exports and joint production to Egypt. The two countries are discussing ways to cooperate not only for production facilities but also for supporting the balance of payments for follow-up counties such as maintenance. Lee Bongjaun, head of the Kai Export Innovation Center, said, "I am confident that the FA 51,000 export targets are becoming visible within the next 10 years, adding, "We plan to work with Egypt to develop the African version of FA 50 and pioneer markets in the African region." The air show began with a performance of the Korean national flag and the Egyptian national flag coming down from the sky along with the performance of an Egyptian military band. Egypt's Silvestars then introduced various types of formation flights, cross, rear, and twist flights for about 11 minutes. The Black Eagles produced a total of 24 overwhelming maneuvers in about 30 minutes, emitting red and blue smoke. As the Black Eagles pilots embroidered the Tajik pattern in the sky, applause erupted from the stands with exclamations of Korea. After the Black Eagles stage, the audience shouted "Black Eagles, wonderful!" Even during the show where about 70 people parachuted down while flying the flags of the two countries. Meanwhile, Defence Minister Lee Jong-sup, who is visiting Australia, held a meeting with Australian Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister Richard Marles in Canberra to discuss ways to expand cooperation in the defence and defence sectors. The Ministry of National Defence said Yang decided to strengthen cooperation between the defence authorities and each military, including regular consultative bodies such as diplomatic and defense ministers' meetings between the two countries. The two countries agreed to further promote cooperation in defense, science and technology, space and defense as well as joint bilateral and multilateral exercises in the region. In particular, the Australian side said at the meeting that it hopes to strengthen defense and defense cooperation with its ally South Korea in the process of dramatically enhancing its defense capabilities over the next 10 years. As the U.S. is reportedly considering restricting exports of semiconductor equipment to China, concerns are raised that domestic companies may be hit. Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix operate semiconductor factories in China. According to Industries on the 5th, the U.S. government is considering preventing memory semiconductor manufacturing companies in China from importing U.S. semiconductor manufacturing equipment. It is interpreted that the move is aimed at Chinese company Yangtze Memory Technology YMTC. YMTC, which recorded less than 1% of NAND flash market share in 2020, increased its market share to around 2% last year. In a report in June last year, the White House was concerned that the low price of YMTC would pose a direct threat to U.S. memory producers Micron and Western Digital. Although the U.S. is trying to ban exports of equipment to Czech Chinese companies, there is a view that Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix could have a spark. This is highly likely to be a production facility located in China, not a Chinese company. Samsung Electronics operates NAND flash production plants and semiconductor packaging plants in Xi'an and Suzhou, China. SK Hynix has a NAND flash plant in Dalian, China. If sanctions are implemented, neither Samsung Electronics nor SK Hynix will be able to bring U.S. semiconductor equipment into the plant. It is said that the semiconductor industry support law recently passed by the U.S. Congress could also hurt Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. This is because it contains a clause that limits investment in China for 10 years. The bill will support companies that build semiconductor manufacturing plants in the U.S. and apply the investment tax deduction rate to manufacturing semiconductor and semiconductor production tools at 25%. It will provide a total of $52 billion to the semiconductor industry, including $11 billion for research and labor development and $2 billion for manufacturing defense-related semiconductor houses. However, companies that receive tax benefits will be prohibited from expanding their semiconductor production capacity to China or concerned countries for 10 years. Apartment prices in Seoul have fallen for 10 consecutive weeks. Apartment prices in Sokogu, which had continued to rise alone, also stopped rising. According to the weekly apartment price trend of the Korea Real Estate Agency on the 4th, apartment prices in Seoul continued to fall for 10 weeks this week, falling 0.07% from a week ago. Sokogu, which continued to rise alone despite apartment prices in most parts of Seoul turning downward between April and May, shifted from a 0.01% rise last week to a steady 0%. Except for Soko and Yongsan-gu, apartment prices in the remaining 23 districts have fallen. Gangbuk-gu, minus 0.16%, fell the most, while areas where middle and low-priced apartments in Gangbuk, such as Songbuk, Sidamun, Dobong, and Naeun-gu, fell by 0.15%, respectively. The Korea Real Estate Agency explained, as interest rates are expected to continue to rise in the future, sales prices are falling mainly on major complexes. In Gyeonggi and Incheon, the decline widened in a week. In Gyeonggi-do, housing prices in Gwangju and Yeongtonggu, Suwon, fell 0.26%, while in Incheon, Yeonsu-gu, where Songdo New Town is located, fell the most. All apartment prices in the Seoul metropolitan area fell 0.09%. Jeon's prices of apartments in the Seoul metropolitan area fell 0.07% this week as demand for Jeon's decreased in the aftermath of the loan rate hike. The National Financial Industry Union, Finance Union, announced a general strike on the 16th of next month, demanding a 6% salary increase. The financial union will vote for and against the general strike from the 19th. If it continues to be implemented, it will be 6 years since the government of Park Geun-hye held a general strike in 2016 in protest against the performance-based annual salary system. According to the financial sector on the 5th, the general strike leadership, including Chairman Park Hong-bi, has been touring the country since the 1st to discuss the schedule and issues of the general strike. The financial union belongs to 39 branches nationwide, including commercial banks such as Kookmin and Shinyan, as well as state-run banks and local banks. According to the financial union, labor and management have even gone to the adjustment of the Central Labor Relations Commission since the wage negotiations broke down on the 6th of last month, but the decision to suspend the adjustment was made as they failed to find a consensus. It is reported that the financial union demanded a 6.1% wage increase, and the employer claimed 1.4%, failing to narrow differences with each other. Chairman Park stressed, "Conversation is the best way, but it is not a problem to solve through dialogue such as legitimate compensation, expansion of new recruitment and improvement of the wage peak system that has no effect of extending retirement age, opposition to the relocation of state-run banks to provincial areas, and reinstatement of laid-off executives." In the past, the financial union held a total of 3 general strikes. In 2000, the financial union began a general strike involving 65,000 people at 24 workplaces, opposing the government-led merger and demanding the enactment of a special law to abolish government-led finance. The strike ended a day after the government and the financial union agreed. In 2012, the general strike was approved with 91.3% approval, but there was no actual strike. 2 years later, however, there was another strike. A general strike was also carried out on September 3, 2014, signaling the abolition of government finance, blocking parachute personnel, opposition to the government's intervention in labor management relations, and improvement of employment stability and working conditions. Later, the second general strike was announced on September 30, but it was cancelled. The latest strike was in 2016. At that time, about 35,000 to 40,000 people gathered at the World Cup Stadium in Mapogu, Seoul, claiming to abolish the introduction of the performance-based salary system. At that time, the strike ended with some agreement with the user side. The financial union's commitment to the general strike is strong. The financial union is expected to start a full-fledged strike after completing regional resolutions by early next month. However, even if a general strike proceeds, the company plans to minimize damage to its branches. Some predict that non-face-to-face work will be activated after COVID-19, so there will be no significant business disruptions. An official from the financial union said, "There is no specific policy set yet, but we will leave appropriate manpower at the branch." Some people are aware of negative public opinion. They say that the average annual salary of the banking sector is more than 100 million won, and that they should be aware of the situation that has recently been criticized socially for embezzlement of Woori Bank employees and abnormal foreign currency remittance transactions. An official from a commercial bank said, "In the case of strikes in the financial sector, the public is not always looking at them, and it is also true that authorities such as the Financial Supervisory Service are recently watching banks. Bankers are also conscious of negative public opinion," another commercial bank official said. There is a possibility that the vote will be rejected. The police, who were dispatched after receiving a report that their middle school daughter who went to the academy after midnight could not contact them, found a middle school girl at an unexpected place. According to Incheon Police's Facebook page, the Incheon Jungbu Police Station visited the building where her daughter, a middle school student, was last in the middle school after receiving an urgent report from her father that it's past midnight, but my daughter who went to the academy can't contact me. Late at midnight, the door of the building was tightly closed and could not enter. In response, the police entered the building with the cooperation of the building manager and searched all floors of the 14-story building for about an hour in groups of 2. However, the police, who could not find Ms. A, visited the academy where Ms. A attended for the last time. The police, who confirmed that there was a reading room inside by shining a flashlight through the door of the academy, knocked on the door several times. Then a little buzz came from inside. The police, who confirmed that there was a person inside, sent a signal using a whistle and a flashlight. Even if the door opened, a student came out from inside. It was Ms. A who was reported. As it turned out, I fell asleep with earplugs on while studying in the reading room, and I didn't know that the academy door was closed. The police took Ms. A to her father. Ms. A's father, who was nervous, touched her face as soon as he saw Ms. A, touching her face. After that, A returned home safely with her father. Amid the COVID-19 resurgence, 4 children under the age of 10 have been confirmed to have died after being infected with COVID-19 last month. The Central Disease Control Headquarters announced on the 4th that a total of 4 COVID-19 deaths under the age of 10 occurred in July, 2 in Gyeonggi-do and 1 in Sejong-si and Gwangju Metropolitan City, respectively. First of all, on the 11th of last month, a first-year elementary school child in Anyang-si, Gyeonggi-do, was confirmed to be infected and was taken to the emergency room while being treated at home, but died. On the 12th of last month, a child under the age of 10 living in Gyeonggi-do died while being treated in the emergency room after being diagnosed with COVID-19, and a child in Gwangju was confirmed in the emergency room of the hospital he visited. The child was treated but died the next day. On the 15th of last month, a third-year elementary school child in Sejong showed symptoms of high fever and convulsions after being confirmed. The child was taken to the emergency room for treatment, but died the next day. Baek Kyung-ran, director of the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and head of the Central Disease Control Headquarters, said at a regular briefing that day, if confirmed infants are not controlled by fever reducers or have symptoms of loss of consciousness due to dehydration, it is better to visit a medical institution for treatment. Lee Sang-won, head of the Epidemiological Investigation and Analysis Team at Central Disease Control Headquarters, also stressed, after infants are infected with COVID-19, they should observe well for a certain period of time, adding, if symptoms suddenly worsen, they should visit medical institutions and conduct tests and treatments quickly. As of 0 o'clock that day, the cumulative death toll of COVID-19 was 25,144. Among them, 27 infants and children under the age of 10, 0.11%. Of the 310 critically ill patients currently being treated, 1.29%, are under the age of 10. The tires of the disabled vehicle parked in the parking area for the disabled were damaged twice in a row, and the police suspected the intention and launched an investigation. According to Masan-dongbu Police Station in South Gyeongsang Province on the 4th, tires of vehicles in parking areas for the disabled in an apartment complex in Masan-hoi-won-gu, Changwon City, were damaged for the 20th and 28th consecutive days of last month. The victim's owner, A, reported to the police that someone in the neighborhood intentionally damaged the tire based on the fact that the tire was pierced by a sharp object. After posting on the online community Bobby Dream and reporting a vehicle parked in the disabled parking area of the apartment several times, A complained that someone stabbed his vehicle tire with an awl and made a hole. A, who introduced himself as a mother raising 2 children, including a child with a severe disability, said that there was no parking area for the disabled in the apartment, so after requesting the management office, there was a parking area for the disabled, but it was difficult to park the disabled vehicle. Even after looking at the signs of disabled cars, non-disabled vehicles parked in disabled parking areas every day and reported them to the safety newspaper several times, he said. Some cars parked more than 5 days a week without answering the phone on purpose. A later suffered a sudden flat tire that had been intact. My child was sick, so I was picking them up in my car to go to the hospital, and I got a warning light saying my tire pressure was low, and the tire in the back was about a third left and I fell down. I went to the repair shop and changed my tire to a used one. He then said, the tire repair shop took out the perforated tire and saw it, and they said, someone stabbed it, adding, there was a mark that was pierced inside because the tire was stamped with an awl. I was so angry. In the meantime, A said that he asked the management office to check CCTV and reported it to the police. The police are continuing CCTV analysis and investigation, believing that if it is confirmed that the tire was intentionally damaged, it could be charged with property damage. The head of a daycare center accused of killing a 21-month-old girl by covering her blanket and making her lie face down and pressing her body to prevent her from moving was sentenced to 9 years in prison. The first part of the Supreme Court announced on the 5th that it has confirmed the lower court's sentence of 9 years in prison at the appeal trial of A, who was indicted on charges of violating the Special Act on Punishment of Child Abuse Crimes. On March 30 last year, A was handed over to trial on charges of killing B, who was 21 months old, at a daycare center in Yeonggu, Daejeon. Mr. A, the director of the daycare center, tried to put Ms. B to sleep, but when he struggled, he lay down on the nap blanket and covered the blanket up to the neck. Since then, it has been investigated that B has been restrained from moving with her legs and arms. A maintained this posture for about 11 minutes. When Ms. B did not move, Mr. A removed the blanket was removed. However, she did not lie down right away again and left B lying down for an hour. The child eventually died of suffocation. In addition, A was accused of abusing a child 35 times by binding the child to sleep. He was found to have acted such as pushing his head down to the floor or slapping his cheek when the children lifted or tossed their heads. The younger sister, A's biological sister and a 2-year-old homeroom teacher, was also handed over to trial. It was a charge of aiding and abetting Mr. A without restraining him when he abused children. The first trial pointed out, A worked as a nursery teacher at a daycare center for more than 15 years before the incident occurred, adding, he repeated the wrong behavior even though he must have been well aware of the characteristics of children's behavior. The victim lost her life without complaining of pain due to Mr. A's crime, he said. The parents are groaning in front of the unacceptable reality that their young daughter, who is less than 2 years old, died in trust. However, the first trial sentenced A to 9 years in prison, saying, A admitted that his actions were wrong and showed an attitude of reflection. In addition, it ordered completion of 40 hours of child abuse treatment programs and restrictions on employment at child-related institutions for 10 years. A's younger brother was sentenced to 1 year in prison and 2 years of probation, and ordered to take 40 hours of child abuse prevention lectures and restrict employment at child-related institutions for 5 years. At the appeals court, A's side protested that it was to allow children to take a nap comfortably. He also claimed that it was not abuse because it was not proven that the children felt pain. However, the appeals court dismissed, A seems to have tried to put the child to sleep to secure his time because if the child does not take a nap, it will interfere with his work, which results in an increase in his work burden and a decrease in rest time. In addition, based on the CCTV footage, the children burst into tears when A exercised tangible power, the other victims were scared when A called, and the victims who were able to speak said, A's legs were heavy. In the meantime, he maintained the judgment of the first trial, saying, A recognized that there was a risk or possibility that his actions could harm the health and development of the child's body. The police decided to analyze the cell phone of the reference person who died after being investigated in connection with the alleged misappropriation of corporate cards by Kim Hye-kyung, the spouse of Lee Jae-myung, a member of the Democratic Party of Korea. Suwon Nambu Police Station in Gyeonggi-do announced on the 4th that it is analyzing the mobile phone of A reference to the case who died on the 26th of last month, by digital forensics. However, the police made it clear that it was a general investigation procedure. The purpose is to clarify that there is no possibility of murder by checking the exact details of the death. Earlier, the police asked the National Forensic Service to conduct an autopsy on A's body and received the first opinion that there were no injuries caused by external force. It will take some time for the exact analysis results to be released. A reference to the alleged misappropriation of corporate cards involving lawmaker Lee Jae-myung's wife Kim, was found dead at her home in Suwon on the 26th of last month, after being questioned by police once. The police believe that A made an extreme choice based on the fact that there were no signs of external intrusion in the situation at the scene. No suicide notes were found at the scene. Mr. A is an acquaintance of Mr. B, a former 5th-grade employee of the General Affairs Division of the Gyeonggi provincial government, a key suspect in this case. The villa where A was found dead is also known to be owned by Bae's mother and daughter. It was confirmed that he recently attended the Gyeonggi Southern Police Agency and was investigated once. A is also a former soldier from the Defense Security Command. At the end of 2020, when Lee Jae-myung was serving as governor of Gyeonggi-do, he was appointed as a non-executive director at the Gyeonggi-do Economic Science Promotion Agency, a public institution under Gyeonggi-do. Suspicions of connection with lawmaker Lee Jae-myung have been raised steadily as he has worked as a driver at the candidate camp at the time of the presidential election. A public interest reporter, the first informant of Kim Hae-kyung's alleged misappropriation of corporate cards, a spouse of Lee Jae-myung, a lawmaker of the Democratic Party of Korea, said he would sue B, who is called a key figure in the scandal. In a telephone interview with YouTube channel Back Briefing on the 4th, a public interest reporter, said, "I will be held accountable for the wounds I received from B," adding, "I will file a complaint." It is known that A did not elaborate on the wrongdoing that B committed to him and did not disclose what charges he would sue B. Regarding B's investigation as a suspect on the 3rd, he said, "I hope he has told the truth even now," adding, "At the time of the incident, B apologized, and Kim bowed his head in front of the public, but did he ever apologize to a public interest reporter?" In April, A was recognized by the National Rights Commission as a public interest reporter and took measures to protect his/her personal life, but it is reported that the 6-month period ends this month and he/she may not be able to receive personal protection from next month. In response, A said, "It is said that there is a meeting on the extension before the end of the personal protection measures," adding, "The media and others are helping a lot. We need protection, and we hope it will extend our personal protection," he said. Regarding allegations that Lee Jae-myung of the Democratic Party of Korea rented his house next door in the name of the Gyeonggi Housing and Urban Corporation, GH, ahead of the last presidential election, police reportedly secured circumstantial evidence that B, a close aide to Lee's wife Kim Hae-kyung, offered a lease to the real estate agency on behalf of the next door. This is contrary to the position of Rep. Lee, who completely denied the allegations, saying, "I was not involved in the lease process of GH." Lee Jae-myung has been living in an apartment in Songnam since 1998. In summary, B visited a real estate agency in the summer of 2020 to sell the house next door for lease, and GH signed a lease contract with the landlord for a deposit of 950 million won on August 6, 2020. The Gyeonggi Nambu Police Agency reportedly summoned a real estate agent to investigate the case. The police were reportedly investigating the possibility that B was involved in the process under the direction of Upper Line and needed to present the lease contract to the real estate agency to make it look like a normal transaction. Lawmaker Lee's house and next door have a structure in which the front door is adjacent side by side. During the presidential election in February this year, the Power of the People raised suspicions that the house next to Lee Jae-myung, who was rented by GH, may have been used as an election office for Lee Jae-myung. Some pointed out that GH's lease of the apartment violated the guidelines for operation and management of the dormitory, which limits the area dedicated to each person. However, the police are paying attention to the fact that B, who was involved in the lease process, served as Kim Hae-kyung's performance secretary as a 5th-grade secretary of the Gyeonggi-do General Affairs Division at the time. B is also a key figure in the allegation that he privately misappropriated the Gyeonggi-do corporate card while delivering food to Kim Hae-kyung. At the time of GH's signing of the lease contract, Lee Jae-myung's next door was owned by A in his 80s and lived by his son B's family. B is known to be close to Kim Hae-kyung and B, including Lee Jae-myung, who was hired by a public institution under Songnam City in 2011, when he was the mayor of Songnam City. Legal experts said, according to B's statement, if Lee Jae-myung's explanation at the time is found to be false, it could be a violation of the election law. Police summoned B for questioning on the 3rd. Meanwhile, the police are reportedly forensics on the cell phone of B's acquaintance, Kim, who made an extreme choice on the 26th of last month after being investigated as a witness for suspect of misappropriation of corporate cards. The police also summoned a public interest reporter who first exposed the corporate card suspicion as a reference on the same day. The legal community predicts that the summons of Kim Hae-kyung, who has been cited as the top line in the case, is also imminent. Kim Sung-jin, CEO of IKEist, who is under police investigation for allegedly giving sexual favors to party leader Lee Jun-seok, said, "We should summon party leader Lee Jun-seok immediately and investigate him." Kang Shin-up, CEO Kim's legal representative, met with reporters in front of the Seoul Detention Center ahead of the police's 4th interview on the 5th and said, "There was a lot of evidence, so we could immediately summon and search for it." Since the allegation of sexual favors arose, party leader Lee Jun-seok sent Kim Chol-kyun, head of the party's political affairs office, down to Daejeon to destroy evidence by writing an investment memorandum to informants and making fake confirmations, he said. Kim claimed through lawyer Kang, a legal representative, that Lee Jun-seok, the party's leader, received not only sexual favors but also in kind. On August 23, 2013, party leader Lee Jun-seok sent a cosmetics set worth 9 million won to a volunteer group meeting where he was the representative teacher, CEO Kim said. There is also evidence such as receipts. CEO Kim also reportedly stated that he sent Korean beef sets worth 600,000 won on Chuseok in 2013 and also sent holiday gifts by 2015. Lawyer Kong said, the party leader Lee Jun-sok was treated like a bribe and brought President Park Geun-hye to Ikeist, adding, "We need to summon Lee for questioning." After the police investigation, Kim visited the Gangnam police station in Seoul and filed a complaint against party leader Lee Jun-sok on charges of innocence. Lawyer Kong explained, this is because Lee Jun-sok, the leader of the party, sued the Garo Sero Research Institute, which raised suspicions, saying, there is no such fact.